Tom. Don't think you can get away with such a defiant attitude. I'm going to report your behavior to the president right now. Look forward to losing your seat by tomorrow. At work, I noticed a female employee working alone in a secluded area. For some reason, she was sidelined from her regular duties by the director's orders and was only doing menial tasks around the office. It seemed suspicious to me that she was assigned tasks clearly below her capabilities. Then, she told me that the director might be embezzling company funds, and since she had noticed this, the director was trying to get rid of her. Outraged by the director's selfish actions, I offered to help isolate her, and we planned to gather evidence together and expose the director's misconduct. Eventually, when we raised our concerns, the upper management began to investigate the director's responsibility. In response, the infuriated director argued illogically that she and I had set a trap to pin the blame on him. At that moment, her true identity, which she had kept hidden even from me, was revealed, and realizing the fate that awaited him, the director turned pale and trembled. I am Tom Harrison, 32 years old. I work for a company that specializes in home remodeling. Our company operates nationwide, and for the past 3 years, I had been assigned to the Chicago branch. This month, I returned to the New York headquarters and was promoted to section chief. Our company typically requires employees who are candidates for management positions to have several years of experience in regional offices. Like others, I was offered to move to a regional branch 3 years ago, with the understanding that it would prepare me for promotion to section chief upon my return to headquarters. Though I was ambitious about advancing my career, it wasn't just for the sake of promotion. Primarily, I was motivated by a sense of fulfillment in my work and the desire to take on more responsible roles. I had the choice of several locations for my assignment, but I chose the northernmost branch in Chicago without hesitation. Although a branch has now been established in Minneapolis, Chicago was the furthest north at the time I was deployed. My desire to work in northern areas had solid reasons. In winter, the northern regions are isolated by snow for months, presenting challenges not found in warmer regions. For instance, when constructing houses, the roofs must be able to withstand heavy snowfall, and plumbing installations must always consider the possibility of freezing. To operate a remodeling business in northern climates, it was essential to have a range of knowledge to cope with the harsh winter conditions. For example, even building a single wall required more insulation, which meant thicker walls that reduced indoor space. Adjustments to the interior design were necessary to accommodate this. Plumbing couldn't be simply routed outside, it had to be buried in the ground or run through insulated walls. Even the overhangs of roofs had to be designed with space to shed snow, which made design and construction more labor-intensive. As a result, construction periods were longer, which meant higher costs to the client. Finding ways to manage these costs was crucial. That's why colleagues who had worked in northern areas often said that jobs in New York and further south felt easier by comparison. Having heard such experiences from my seniors, I was determined to choose a northern assignment if the opportunity arose, believing that tackling more challenging work would be a valuable life experience. Although I had been repeatedly told about the difficulties in snowy regions, unexpected situations still arose no matter how well we prepared. If plumbing froze, it had to be resolved even in the dead of winter, requiring us to schedule construction while keeping an eye on the weather. Troubleshooting often meant giving up weekends, and although we would receive compensatory time off later, it wasn't uncommon to be exhausted from working in the cold and losing sleep. However, each resolved issue added practical know-how, and relationships with contractors and colleagues were strengthened, allowing me to experience both the challenges and joys of my work. Returning to headquarters after a long absence, the place felt incredibly fresh to me, despite no significant renovations since my departure. The confidence gained from facing and overcoming difficult tasks broadened my perspective, making the familiar scenes at headquarters appear new. Upon my return, I first greeted the president and then went around greeting my senior colleagues and peers. There had been many new hires in the 3 years I was away. While receiving greetings from these newcomers, I thought about the possibility of some of them being assigned to regional offices in the future, and I realized I would be the one giving advice then, which made me reflect on my own growth. Having been assigned to return to the sales department, I made my rounds and then went to my floor to greet my new superior, Jason, the sales director. I'm Tom Harrison, just returned from the Chicago branch. I look forward to working with you. Ah, you're the new section chief starting today. Yes. I'm familiar with the basic tasks here from my time as a team leader, but I will adapt as quickly as possible to any changes in our operations, so please let me know how I can assist. Don't be so tense. I'm in charge here, so just follow my directions. Of course, I understand that. By taking over some of the site management tasks you've been handling, Jason, I hope it will allow you to focus more on broader management duties across the company. Are you deciding what I should be doing now? Excuse me. Did I just hear that now that you're handling the site, I should just step back and deal with the higher-ups? Was that just my imagination? No, I had no intention of dictating how you should do your job. I just meant to express my enthusiasm and willingness to reduce your workload. We'll see about that. You, eager to score points by choosing an assignment in Chicago. What are you aiming for next? Taking over by making yourself stand out in this department. I've never thought of such a thing. Don't lie. There's no way someone without career ambitions would choose an assignment in Chicago. Remember, you might have been able to fool the country folks up north with your smooth talk, but I'm different from the rest here. Pointing to his head, Jason continued. Anyway, I'll personally review everything here as usual. I will decide your tasks. Just focus on following my directions. With that, Jason stood up abruptly, his breathing heavy, and left the floor without even the typical pleasantries like, "Looking forward to working with you." Or, "I have high expectations." Watching his retreating figure, I sensed that my future tasks would be challenging. As my work as a section chief began, I greeted the sales team members and promptly settled at my desk, ready to start on the tasks ahead. It was then that I noticed an odd space in the corner of the floor. The management desks, including Jason's and mine, were positioned along the wall, allowing us to oversee the entire area. In front of us, the employees' desks were grouped by their job functions. Among the islands of desks forming across the floor, one desk stood isolated near the window in the corner farthest from the entrance, where a female employee sat alone. It was customary here to group team members who interact frequently on the same island. Thus, it wasn't unusual for seating arrangements to change as projects concluded and roles shifted. Since working in a company inherently involves interacting with others, it was normal to belong to one of these islands. However, this female employee was secluded like an isolated little island, silently working on her computer. I thought I had looked at all the employees' faces when I first greeted them, but I didn't remember hers. Her desk was surrounded by potted plants and aged file cabinets, which obstructed the view from the rest of the floor, explaining why I hadn't noticed her before. On closer inspection, her spot seemed wholly unsuitable for working. She sat with her back to the window, which was fine in the morning but would likely make her computer screen hard to see when the sun set in the afternoon. Moreover, the walls of file cabinets around her desk meant she had to walk much further than others to exit the floor or even to go to the bathroom. I quickly checked the employee roster and found her name to be Kate Anderson. Though she looked quite young, she was a mid-career hire and was 28 years old this year. However, I couldn't find her name in any ongoing project member lists. Curious, I asked a colleague about her during a break. Do you know why Kate Anderson from the sales department is always working alone? As soon as I mentioned Kate's name, my colleague, who had been smiling, turned serious and looked around nervously before responding. Oh, you're still not up to speed with the floor's dynamics. Be careful with what you say about Kate. Especially, don't ask Jason why she's working alone. What do you mean? Remembering Jason's authoritarian manner, an idea struck me. Don't tell me it's workplace bullying or harassment targeting her. I kept my voice low, but my colleague cautioned me that it was still too loud. Apparently, discussing her was a sensitive issue here. Before I went to Chicago, I had seen interpersonal conflicts, but I had never felt such a bizarre atmosphere, and it left me feeling uneasy. It's not like the entire workplace is against Kate. It's just that for some reason, Jason is overly aggressive towards her. Aggressive? Is it because she made too many mistakes and can't be trusted with important tasks? That's just it, I don't really know. She was assigned to projects normally for a while after she joined, but then suddenly, Jason removed her from the team and forced her to this isolated desk near the window. It's been like this for about a year now. A year. Why does everyone stay silent? And why hasn't she complained to HR or left the company? That's the thing, we don't really know the whole story. Someone who brought up her situation in front of Jason was called into a separate room and got a lengthy scolding. Since then, nobody dares to ask him. Unilateral harassment by Jason, then. But that still doesn't explain why she keeps quiet. I heard that a female employee tried to reach out to Kate once, but Kate just keeps to herself about it. You'd think she might complain to a fellow female employee about a boss, but she doesn't say a thing. After that, even the women started keeping their distance. What's going on? So, what work is she doing now? Now she's just taking on miscellaneous and routine tasks from not just the sales department but other departments too. Are they making her do chores from other departments too? Isn't that basically bullying by the whole company? Settle down, man. Kate herself started sending emails to various departments saying, "If you have any non-confidential chores, please feel free to send them my way." At first, we hesitantly gave her light tasks, but she finished them so quickly and without asking for anything in return. So, she's accepting her current situation. What is she thinking? I'd like to know too, but she won't answer, and if Jason finds out we're prying, he might retaliate. So, everyone just turns a blind eye. Have you ever asked her to do chores? A few times when it was really busy. Hey, don't look at me like that. And how was her work? Just as the rumors said. She's incredibly fast and accurate. Even with tasks she'd never seen before, she'd research past cases and finish them without a single question. So whatever the reason Jason is attacking her, it's not because she lacks skills. So, she's too competent, and that's intimidating. Some say Jason and she had a fallout over a personal relationship, but in these times, if it got out that he was involved with a subordinate, he'd definitely be finished. For a careerist like him, that's just not possible. Got it. I just got back, so I won't make a fuss or treat this as a company-wide issue, but I also don't want to join in and use her as a go-to for chores. I'll look into this matter in a way that makes sense to me. I figured you'd say that. But don't start anything right in front of Jason. Yeah, I can feel how much Jason has this floor under his control. I'll be careful. From that day on, I carefully observed how Kate spent her days and what interactions she had with Jason while advancing my own work. Initially, I suspected Jason might be abusing his authority by making Kate do menial tasks that didn't match her skills to humiliate and bully her. If this were true, it meant Jason was taking the easy way out by targeting a vulnerable female employee for his stress relief. I planned to intervene as soon as I understood the situation. However, soon after I began observing, I realized that the situation was not as simple as it seemed. Kate Anderson rarely left her desk during the day and seldom spoke to other employees, but occasionally, some employees who seemed to ask her for favors would visit her. Each of those employees interacted with Kate only to the extent necessary, leaving quickly, but I noticed that Jason was always carefully watching these interactions. Even if he was on the phone, Jason would abruptly end his call if he saw Kate starting a conversation and turn his attention towards her. I couldn't understand what was so concerning about Kate to Jason, but if Jason had the upper hand to command Kate, he could make her report everything she discussed. This meant that while Jason seemed to be pressuring Kate constantly, he wasn't in total control of her actions. Suddenly, I asked a colleague from the IT systems management department if Jason frequently checked the emails within the department. My colleague hesitated but admitted that Jason occasionally inspected employees' email logs under the pretext of necessary supervision. I felt this was quite problematic, but nowadays, cases of employees deliberately leaking confidential information have frequently made the news. If management deems it related to confidentiality, they are allowed to check the timing of emails sent and received by subordinates upon a formal request. If checking the content of the emails is necessary, approval from a director or higher and the presence of multiple managers from different departments are required. Jason was only checking the timing, not the content, but even such checks should not be happening as frequently as they apparently were, about 2 or 3 times a month for Kate. At this point, I was becoming convinced that Jason was up to something suspicious. Jason was overly sensitive to Kate's actions. Not content with ostracizing her from the sales department and isolating her, he even checked whom she emailed, which was unusual. However, I wasn't ready to confront Jason with just this information. It was clear that Jason was the type who wouldn't hesitate to misuse his authority or force his way through. If I asked him straightforwardly, "What's this about?" without solid evidence, there's no way Jason would answer sincerely. Instead, he might even claim to the higher-ups that Section Chief Harrison is conducting suspicious investigations within the company. The only option I saw was to wait until Jason was absent and then send an email to Kate, asking her to meet me in a conference room for a brief discussion. When she arrived, she maintained her composure despite being suddenly summoned by a section chief she barely knew. "What can I help you with?" I decided to cut to the chase. "Jason seems to be extremely wary of you. Can you tell me why?" Kate, who had been looking down, finally raised her eyes and met mine directly. "I don't understand your question." "Jason is my superior, so it's normal for him to check on my work progress. However, I see no reason why he would have any further interest in me. I'm not one for beating around the bush, so I'll be straightforward. I get the feeling that Jason is hiding something that he doesn't want others to know about. Admittedly, I've only just arrived, and it's just a hunch without any proof. But I suspect you know something concrete about it, and that's why I'm asking." Kate's expression changed slightly after hearing my words. I felt that now she might finally show the true feelings she had been hiding behind her stoic facade. "Jason keeps you isolated from other employees and tries to overhear your conversations whenever you talk to someone. Moreover, I know that he has been checking your email logs." This time, Kate's eyes widened, showing her surprise. "Having my emails checked isn't pleasant, but since the emails exchanged using the company's address are not private but business-related, I believe management is allowed to view them if they provide an appropriate reason." "Kate, you seem to know the rules very precisely, even ones I wasn't aware of as a new section chief. You don't happen to know all the internal regulations, do you?" "Not all of them, but I am aware that it's a violation of the rules for you to disclose that Jason has been checking my emails." "Wait, you're pointing out my violation now." "Your point is valid, but I felt pressured by Jason's unfair treatment towards you, and I decided to intervene, knowing it might break some rules." When I spoke with a tone of disbelief, Kate replied in a softer voice than I had ever heard from her before. "I apologize. That was a joke. I just wanted to see how you would react." It took me a moment to realize I had been teased, but her slight smile made me laugh as well. We both laughed quietly, careful not to let our voices carry outside the conference room, but it felt like the tense barrier between us had been lifted. "I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting a new section chief to delve so deeply right after meeting me, so I reacted unusually." "That's all right. If you think about it, the situation you're in is abnormal. People get used to their environment if they're in it for long. If I had stayed silent for a month, I might have lost the motivation to confront you with the truth. That's why it's often better to act immediately if something seems off, even if it means taking a risk. I've heard about you, but you are indeed proactive. And you've accurately identified the tension between Jason and me in such a short time. Your observational skills are sharp. You had heard about me before I returned." "Yes. Everyone was hoping that the atmosphere in the sales department would change with your return. That means Jason has been negatively affecting the mood here, huh?" "Yes. And about the main issue. Jason has been embezzling company funds over a long period." "What? Are you sure about that?" "Yes. When I was first assigned to this department and involved in a project, I noticed discrepancies when checking the expense flows. Jason had suggested cutting costs by having advertising materials created by sole proprietors directly, bypassing agencies. That's not unusual these days since individuals can possess advanced editing skills. It's not necessarily strange for a sales director to suggest outsourcing directly to individuals rather than through agencies. That's what I thought at first, so I checked the money flow carefully. There turned out to be multiple legal entities acting as the contact point, but I discovered that they all had the same owner. So, it looks like multiple individual contractors are being used, but in reality, it's all centralized. It's hardly a coincidence that the same person happens to take all our contracting jobs. Upon further investigation, I found out that this business owner was introduced by Jason himself. So, the director created a system where he funneled all our advertising projects to individuals connected to him. That's right. And despite the costs being significantly higher than market rates when we order commercial production, it was still slightly cheaper than going through an agency, so it was never questioned before. But if those orders are connected to the director, it suggests he might be setting high prices to kick back a portion of the funds. I'm not the police, so I don't have evidence strong enough to win a court case. But when I tried to order a commercial from a completely different individual as a test, the director interfered and stopped it. Yes, he suddenly called me in and berated me fiercely. When I explained that I was trying to reduce costs, he screamed that a rookie who doesn't understand the business should not make decisions on their own. The next day, I was removed from the project and my desk was moved to its current location. That's more than suspicious, it's almost like he confessed that your suspicions were correct. Since then, the process of ordering commercial creation from that individual's company has continued. Each contract might be small, but the total amount spent on internet advertising has been steadily increasing, so if he's getting kickbacks, the amount embezzled must be substantial. I leaned back in my chair, looked up, and took a deep breath. I'm surprised. Right after being assigned here, you grasped the flow of money and even shook up the director by pretending to order from a new vendor. Kate, I know you were hired mid-career, but what did you do before? This isn't something a mere clerk could handle. Well, I've had various roles. What? I thought we were at a point where we could talk openly, and now you're evading the question. It's not that I don't trust you, Chief. I think we should focus on monitoring the director's actions right now. If we talk too long, it might draw attention and alert the director. We should head back to the floor now. That makes sense. Can I contact you privately moving forward, just to be safe? I said this and exchanged messaging app IDs with her, promising to use it only for work-related communications. From then on, we carefully documented every suspicious action related to the director's possible embezzlement and exchanged information. Kate had been gathering data alone by the window, but with my extensive contacts within headquarters, our investigation quickly gained momentum. I cautiously reached out to the information security, advertising, and accounting departments, accumulating circumstantial evidence of the director's kickbacks on advertising expenses. Given the director's tyrannical work style, he had already made many enemies across departments, which sped up the information gathering. Eventually, we had enough evidence to accuse the director to the senior management. The only thing left was to decide whether to submit the evidence to senior management and formally accuse him or confront the director with the evidence and give him a chance to cease his wrongdoing and repent. During this time, the director never eased his surveillance, occasionally summoning me without reason to rant and insult me in front of others. Each time, he would degrade her with insults like, "If you can't even do this, you don't deserve to be here." Or, "You're just a salary thief." By then, I was convinced that his actions were not just workplace harassment but pressure to drive her out because he suspected she was aware of his misconduct. However, one day, Kate, who usually kept a stoic face during the director's sarcastic remarks, showed signs of fatigue, perhaps due to poor health. Noticing a slight crack in her usually impeccable defense, the director saw an opportunity to push her further and started insulting her with even more offensive language. "What's with that disgusted look? If you don't feel like working, quit now. Or are you just hanging around until you find a wealthy man to latch onto? What a shameless, calculating woman." Hearing such unprofessional remarks, I stood up and confronted him right there. At that moment, I decided to discard the option of giving the director a chance to repent. What, Tom? What do you want? Those words don't sound like job guidance. That's clear harassment. What? You, a young punk, dare to criticize my management? That's not guidance. You're just bullying the weak. You bastard. You realize you'll need to be prepared for the consequences of those words, right? Be prepared yourself. Kate, please go back to your desk and continue your work. At my cue, Kate bowed and returned to her desk. Hey. Who said you could go back? Can't you follow my orders? I said she could go back. If you have a problem with that, talk to me. Tom. Have you lost your manners too, now? Don't think you can get away with such a defiant attitude. I'm going to report your behavior to the president right now. Look forward to losing your seat by tomorrow. With that, the director stomped off, possibly heading to the president's office, but I didn't care. I returned to my desk and sent the documents we had prepared for the accusation to all the board members. Taking a moment, I looked over at Kate, who met my gaze with a knowing look, and I nodded back with a meaningful smile. She understood everything I had done, nodded back, and resumed her work. The next morning, the president appeared on the sales floor first thing. The director hurried over to him, almost crawling in his eagerness to speak. President, I'm honored by your direct visit. Did you act on the issue I reported yesterday? With that, the director looked at me, his smile suggesting he thought he had sealed my fate. Apparently, after he had threatened to report my disrespectful behavior to the president yesterday, he really had rushed to the president to try to have me fired or at least demoted to a regular employee. It was almost childish, the way he had tattled, confident that it would work out for him. In a way, I admired that such a simplistic man could rise to the position of director. There's a certain power in acting without second-guessing, even if others might consider it foolish. Sometimes, those who don't overthink and just act can achieve more than those who play it safe. But in this instance, only Kate and I were confident that this pattern would not hold. Eventually, the president, looking down coldly at the director's continued noisy display, said, Jason, you have been receiving kickbacks over a long period from contractors you favored in the internet advertising expenditures, haven't you? What? Jason's smile froze, and his face turned pale in an instant. What is this all of a sudden? I don't understand. Instead, please discipline that section chief, Tom Harrison. Someone who can't grasp basic workplace rules shouldn't be a section chief. However, the president didn't respond to Jason's plea. Instead, he thrust a document right under Jason's nose. I had lawyers urgently investigate the flow of money yesterday. The contractor who had been receiving our orders has already admitted to giving you kickbacks. How can you take the word of a single individual as truth? Well, that's why we're going to obtain a court order to investigate the money trails in the bank accounts to establish whether this is fact or mere fantasy. If what the contractor says is a lie, there certainly won't be any records of transactions made to your account, right? Hearing the president's resolute intention, Jason's face turned from pale to ashen. But he made one last desperate attempt. That woman. What about her? It's Kate. That insolent woman. Ever since she arrived, she started suggesting we switch to a different advertising agency. She must be the embezzler. She set me up to look suspicious. It must have been her doing that got the contractor to mention my name. I'll go right now and force a confession out of her. With madness in his eyes, Jason glared at Kate, who was sitting by the window, and raised his hands, preparing to charge. But I had already moved closer to her desk. I grabbed Jason by the collar, pushed him back, and brought him in front of the president again. What are you doing, Tom? President, did you see? When I tried to reveal the truth, this Tom physically stopped me. I see now, Tom. You and Kate were in this together, embezzling the money, weren't you? You interfered because you were about to get caught. But now you're both finished. Just confess what you've done now, and maybe the president will consider not pressing criminal charges. Enough, Jason. You despicable scum. Jason, yelled at up close by the president, seemed unable to think clearly anymore, his expression blank. Kate Anderson is actually my own daughter. Stunned by Jason's disgraceful behavior, and having been sure of our victory, I too was momentarily shocked by the president's revelation. Kate is your daughter. As everyone on the floor turned their eyes toward her, Kate quietly stood up, stepped forward from her desk, bowed, and confirmed what the president had said was true. She then looked at me and shared a faint smile, ensuring only I understood. I had kept it a secret from everyone, but I was working as a regular employee to investigate internal misconduct and gather information. A murmur spread through the floor at her voice. Surprised yet somehow feeling it made sense, considering her exceptional efficiency and detailed understanding of compliance rules, I thought. That explains everything. Even without my intervention, she probably would have eventually reported the necessary information to her father, and Jason would have been ousted. I was planning to continue in this role for a few more months, but thanks to the section chief's active cooperation, we were able to accelerate our evidence gathering and resolve the situation sooner. I am grateful for your assistance, Chief. She bowed to me again, but I felt only that I had slightly supported her meticulously prepared plans to corner Jason, not worthy of much pride. More than anything, I was astounded by her mental fortitude, enduring long-term demeaning treatment and daily insults from Jason, even if she was on a secret mission. Meanwhile, Jason, unable to shift the blame, collapsed to the floor like a broken doll, muttering something under his breath. Thus, Jason's long-term embezzlement was fully exposed, and he was stripped of his directorship. The next day, he was seated as a regular employee in what had been Kate's seat, now forbidden by the president from accessing any company information and restricted only to menial tasks like cleaning and sorting obsolete documents. Unable to endure such aimless days, Jason soon began missing work and eventually vanished without a trace, leading to his dismissal. No one in the company truly cared about his whereabouts, and soon he was no longer a topic of conversation. I was deeply thanked by the president for my flawless support, despite not knowing her true identity. The president encouraged me to replace Jason as director soon, but I expressed my desire to earn my promotion by continuing to prove myself as a section chief first. Kate and I, having kept in touch through the messaging app, naturally progressed to dating. The president and everyone in the company were delighted by our relationship, and we received many congratulations. Having inadvertently made a significant contribution, I resolved not to get carried away but to continue working diligently and responsibly for the company, just as I had always done.